ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
Hi, I'm Brett Worthington, the current host of Politics Now. While PK's away, I'll be stepping into her shoes and jumping behind the mic to bring you your daily analysis of the latest political developments. There's never a dull moment in Australian politics if you know where to look. So join me on Politics Now. You can hear it on the ABC Listen app.
Just days ago, Donald Trump declared we were in the midst of the historic dawn of a new Middle East. But already the peace plan is in doubt, with the US president now warning Hamas it will be disarmed, perhaps violently. Today, Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib, a Palestinian-American and senior fellow with the Atlantic Council, on what Hamas is doing to cling on to power. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily. Ahmed, Donald Trump, he's been on this victory lap in the Middle East. He's been greeted as a hero in Israel, and of course he declared that the war is over.
From October 7th until this week, Israel has been a nation at war, but now at last, not only for Israelis, but also for Palestinians and for many others, the long and painful nightmare is finally over.
Can you just reflect on what we've seen in terms of the imagery?
Well, it's quite complex in the sense that you do have reason to celebrate the release of all living Israeli hostages. So far, 8 of the deceased ones. We've had roughly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners released back to their families. And so that is indeed a breakthrough. We've had a limited Israeli withdrawal, allowing the entry of some humanitarian aid in, allowing for a respite, really, in the Gaza Strip. And so that is certainly progress given where we were in just a few weeks ago. However, the imagery has also entailed Hamas reasserting its presence throughout the Gaza Strip, casting doubt on whether or not they'll truly disarm and asking, a lot of questions about phase 2 of the proposed deal.
Yeah, all right. So the peace deal isn't going exactly to plan at this point. One, because, as you mentioned, Hamas has handed back 8 of the bodies of the dead hostages, but they were expecting 20. That part of the bargain hasn't been stuck to by Hamas, has it?
Precisely. And Hamas is using the excuse of it doesn't know where the bodies are located.
Israel has notified the United Nations it has restricted the flow of aid entering Gaza due to the slow transfer of hostage remains. It will allow just half of the 600 trucks into the Strip agreed to under the ceasefire deal.
Ironically, some are speculating that the IDF itself may actually know where the bodies are located or may have precise intel. And thus there's a feeling that Hamas is dragging this out as an insurance policy to ensure that the war does not resume and to buy time so that it can reassert control against all the clans and any opposition throughout Gaza.
And on the ground in Gaza, in addition to this, incredibly disturbing vision has emerged, Ahmed, of Hamas executing 7 men in a small square in Gaza City. Now, this is video that's been verified by Reuters. Just tell me, what does it show?
Well, that video is just a drop in the ocean of what's been occurring. That's just what Hamas has boastfully carried out in the public square, if you will. But that video shows the group gathering a bunch of its sycophants and its supporters, young kids, young teenagers, highly impressionable people, and basically making them cheer, engage in a Super Bowl type party around the shooting in the head of members of the Dugmosh clan that the terror group has called traitors and Israeli collaborators. And what's concerning about this is that now in Gaza, there's fear and trepidation that any time you might have a miscellaneous disagreement with somebody, Hamas or its members can simply label you as a traitor or an Israeli collaborator, and that alone could be cause for you to be killed and executed. And so this is sending shockwaves across Gaza society, which is heavily traumatized from 2 years of war and the bombardment of the Israeli campaign.
All right, well, let's talk more about these opposing groups, these clans in Gaza in a moment. But Donald Trump, he's responded to this video in quite an extraordinary way. First, he said that it didn't really bother him too much that Hamas had taken out a couple of very bad gangs. Those were his words.
Well, I was extraordinarily disturbed when I heard that.
You know, they did take out a couple of gangs that were very bad, very, very bad gangs, and they did take them out, and they killed a number of gang members. And that didn't bother me much, to be honest with you. That's okay. It's a couple of very bad gangs, you know.
It appears that the people of Gaza have been sold out to Hamas to allow the terror group to reconsolidate its control, thinking that this could somehow be part of a brilliant handoff strategy, that by Hamas consolidating its control over Gaza, that preventing Gaza from being lawless, there could be a seamless transition from Hamas running the show to either an international security or a stabilization force, to an interim technocratic government or governance system. And of course, this might have been the price to get Hamas to give up its chief leverage in this whole situation, which are the living Israeli hostages. And so where I think the president is mistaken is that Hamas has outfoxed Netanyahu, outfoxed Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority president, outfoxed and outsurvived multiple Arab regimes and governments. And I don't think he truly comprehends that they have no real intention of disarming, of giving up governance and rule.
Well, Donald Trump says that if Hamas doesn't disarm, then we will disarm them violently, he says.
But we have told them we want to disarm, and they will disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently. But they will disarm. Do you understand me?
Yes, you say
because
quickly.
Everyone says, oh, well, they won't disarm. They will disarm. And I spoke to Hamas, and I said, you're going to disarm, right? Yes, sir, we're going to disarm. That's what they told me. They will disarm or we will disarm them. Got it? Okay.
What do you think he means by that, and what does he mean by we? What, that America will get involved here?
Well, I'm almost certain that the United States will not have direct boots on the ground involvement. Yeah. But I mean, I think he's probably at most or at best referring to a resumption of the Israeli war, something akin to what's happening in Lebanon or something akin to what's happening in the West Bank, or a hybrid of both. But what I'll say to that is Israel has been trying for the last 2 years to take on Hamas and has degraded them significantly, yes, but it has largely failed in eliminating the group and disarming them, despite reducing their arsenal down to a trickle of its former self. And I think that's because you will never have durable success as long as you don't have Palestinians being part of the force that takes on the fight to Hamas.
Well, Ahmed, let's just consider a bit more what we're seeing on the ground in Gaza. Could you tell me a bit more about these men who have been executed by Hamas?
Well, there are different groups and different factions. These clans are part of the native Gaza. You see, Gaza was made up, 2/3 of Gazans are considered refugees or descendants of refugees from 1948, and 1/3 are considered natives. And those are the people that lived there prior to 1948. And that population has a lot of Bedouins, it has a lot of native groups, it has a lot of Arab clans, if you will, that over time have evolved to have a significant status in the Palestinian social fabric. And so some of these guys have been a thorn in Hamas's side and have not really fully submitted to the terror group's iron fist. Nevertheless, the folks that Hamas went after, they weren't exactly a cohesive body per se. They were a variety of different clan members who were picked up, and some of them Hamas accused of working with Israel. Now, it is noteworthy that the Israeli military did try to use some of these clans against the terror organization, and it is equally noteworthy that most of them refused to work with the IDF. So it is really ironic and terrible that Hamas has instead chosen to declare an all-out war against these clans, because many of them have lost family members, they've lost their homes, and many of them have indeed refused to engage with the Israelis.
All right. Well, as you alluded to, of course, the concern is that Hamas is moving quickly to try and fill a vacuum left by the withdrawing Israeli forces. How quickly do you think a stabilisation force and also, of course, this technocratic governing committee can actually be put in place? Because it seems like that's somewhat urgent at this point.
Precisely that. The window of opportunity is narrowing by the day, I would say by the hour. And Hamas is, in my estimation, deliberately dragging out the return of the dead hostages because it wants to buy the most amount of time it can to consolidate power across the entirety of the areas that were vacated by the Israeli military. And so the terror group is absolutely keen on maintaining governance capability, even if they give up direct control of Gaza to a technocratic committee. You know, what if this technocratic committee makes up a decision to disarm Hamas or to stop Hamas from basically acting as a judge, jury, and executioner? Who's going to enforce the decisions of this committee? And so what Hamas is setting in motion is kind of a shadow parallel governance and control apparatus that allows it to remain relevant and to remain the ultimate deciding party. I think it was a grave mistake to not have the withdrawal of the IDF coincide with the entry of Arab and international forces, because now Hamas is clearly saying we won't disarm.
Yeah, as you say, this is a phased peace deal, but Donald Trump, he seems to think they can all be mixed in together.
President Trump, can you tell us when phase 2 of the negotiations will begin?
Well, it started. It started as far as we're concerned. Phase 2 has started. And, the phases are all a little bit mixed in with each other.
He's saying that Hamas needs to disarm, but that wasn't part of the first phase of this deal, was it?
Precisely that. And that's where I'm worried that between the attention of President Trump shifting elsewhere, now that he got his moment, he got the major achievement of returning the hostages, which was his priority, he's not really going to keep investing the political capital needed to maintain the pressure on Turkey and Qatar to pressure Hamas in return, to maintain the pressure on Netanyahu and the Israeli government to move forward in a positive way that actually creates the long-awaited pathway towards Palestinian statehood. Now that the show's over and the reality's setting in, I fail to see how we can substantively move forward in any meaningful way beyond the stagnation and the stalemate that we have at our hand.
All right. Well, Ahmed, of course, the Palestinian people we can see in Gaza are not safe yet. But is anyone safer at this point? Are the Israelis safer? Is it looking like this peace deal will not be fully realised?
Well, I would say the Israelis are safer in that Hamas is absolutely incapable of carrying out a serious October 7th-like attack. I don't think Hamas is really capable of attacking Israeli troops. So I would say the Palestinian people are exceptionally vulnerable to strikes and attacks from Israel, as well as from Hamas. And so I fail to see in the short term the kind of political and security underpinnings of this long-awaited peace.
Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib is a Palestinian-American. He's a senior fellow with the Atlantic Council and the head of the Realign for Palestine initiative. This episode was produced by Sydney Peed. Audio production by Sam Dunn. Our supervising producer is David Cody. I'm Sam Hawley. Thanks for listening.